So it's good because what we're trying to do is to spread the message. So I know sometimes you guys get shy about interrupting in the middle of me talking, but I don't want you to be shy. I want you to talk to me and tell me what are your questions, what are the situations you're having. Or if you just want to chat and ask the questions, that's perfectly fine. As Lindsay knows, throughout this years that we've been doing this series, because during the pandemic, we had just the COVID-19 updates, but now we're doing every month a safety topic, bringing you to awareness of some of the issues that are causing companies to have either fines by OSHA or issues that I'm seeing out there in the field, because I'm still going out there visiting your sites and looking at things and writing reports and helping you with your compliance. So I love doing that. That's my favorite part of the job I do, going out there to you guys and talking with you, talking to your managers, talking to your supervisors, talking to your floor people and discussing. And you know, that's when I really learn what's happening. What's happening at the workplace. Apologize. So if you want to chat, that's perfectly fine. Ask the questions. I might, Lindsay will alert me to them, or you can also email me. Sometimes we go through the entire class and maybe the answer is too long, or I don't know the answer to your question. So what I'd like to do is email you back with more information. I just had a client, for example, ask me regarding gas meters for a certain confined space, and I wasn't too sure, and I wanted to do more research. So I went to their own association and I got some great information for him. So I loved confined space. Has to do with those areas of work that, you know, you have to get in there to clean something or for repair, something like that. But it might be permit required depending on the hazard environment in the space, or if the person breaks the plane of entry, etc. So the best thing to do is not to enter those spaces, definitely. But if we do, we need to see if we can first render the space safe and reclassify it at that point, right? But it's a series of steps. And so I love the questions. That's the point to this entire story I'm telling you about this client of mine. I love questions. Ask the questions, because that's the only way we're all going to learn. So today we're going to focus on how to avoid this fines, which now because of inflation, they increased, I think 7.7%, they went up. So thank you to all of you saying good morning. I really, really enjoy your company. So my information, I've left it on the screen for you guys. Like I said, a quick disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. I do help you with your issues with OSHA and to establish that conversation, either because you want to become part of the VPP program or because you want to do the Golden Gate at any stage of your walk with a consultation program. I'm here to help you. Or sometimes what you want to do is you want to just invite me to your facility to get your OSHA compliance up to snuff. I review your safety programs, or we do training on site. So Lindsay also helps coordinate those 30-hour or 10-hour OSHA cards, which I'm authorized to do those courses. There's my authorization number on your screen. You get a Department of Labor issued card, OSHA card, and that is good. It goes in your curriculum, and it also helps you to speak the same language with the rest of your people there at your organization. So I'm not a nurse. So when we discuss things of health, just mind or keep in mind that it's from a viewpoint of safety, from all of the research and good materials that we already have from OSHA and Federal OSHA, because I love those two sites. They've gotten so much better over the years, and the tools, the e-tools, are just fantastic. So the actual learning objectives of the day are 3 different safety topics that are usually overlooked by most organizations, which will affect you in 2023 and will bring you to that top list, right? OSHA always has different methods of targeting employers. So there are some training topics that would cause you trouble, that would cause you to be fined and penalized by OSHA, because I see in my walks with my clients, I see that we are overlooking them. So I need you to also take a look at the documentation that you have and become better at it, because the more I look at your training records, at your OSHA logs, I see some issues that continue to happen over and over. And then number 3, understanding the importance of OSHA compliance, which you do know it, but I want to give you some steps on how to do it the right way. Okay, let's get started. So this is an example. This is a good video. This is an example. It's a quick video on how things or when things go wrong. So let's take a look at it. Let me just get back here and share it. All right, so I'm sharing here this one. Lindsay, let me know if you guys can hear it.
The young worker was using a plasma cutting torch to cut the top off a 45-gallon drum. The empty drum had previously contained windshield washer concentrate, which was 100% methanol, a flammable liquid. Only about a tablespoon evaporated inside a drum is enough to be explosive. The torch pierced the drum. Vapors from residual methanol ignited. The drum exploded. Fire raged through the shop. The young workers suffered serious burns. The employer failed to assess whether cutting the drum was safe. There also was inadequate instruction and training of the worker in his duties and in the use of the plasma cutter. Inadequate supervision of the young worker to safely carry out his duties. No health and safety committee or program. No first aid attendant. No young worker orientation and training as required by regulation. Make sure you instruct, train, and supervise workers so they can do their jobs safely. And unless the product's manufacturer allows it and you take special precautions, never use a torch on drums that previously contained flammable liquids.
Guys, if you've never looked at the videos by WorkSafe BC, they're fantastic. They're great. You can use them. They have a myriad of videos. So I've seen a lot of my colleagues, a lot of the authorized trainers by OSHA use them. And they highlight many issues like in 2 minutes. This is awesome to bring to the table, especially during summer, because we get a lot of new hires, because there's a lot of young people out there looking for a summer job. And you get to hire people either through a temp agency or just because during the summer you hire more people. And so I want you to chat with me and I want you to tell me, what do you think went wrong? I know he mentioned it, but what called your attention? What do you think here is the key issue? What is the key issue? That's what I want you to answer. If you watch the video closely, what do you think went wrong?
There's a comment in the chat, lack of training.
Okay, I love that. Lindsay, are you seeing my slides? The young worker burnt and drum explosion? Just the slides? Okay, cool. Okay, so we're seeing some answers here. I love it when you guys chat. Lack of training, it's a training issue. So the equipment, the tools that he was using, hazard communication, yeah, lack of hazard communication comprehensive program. So I love your answers. Cutting a drum with a flammable liquid. Yeah, so, you know, thank you, Anne. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you, all of you, because you know, Jennifer and Liz and Brian and all of you chiming in. This is a good conversation. What happens is, and I played this same video last week for one of my clients, we were having, or they were having rise in injuries. And one of the main issues there was that their incident investigation program is not really up to par, and supervisors haven't taken formal training. And when we don't have formal training, we look for the most obvious reason. And that's why I asked you guys, and you guys are so experienced, you answer training and you answer with the good stuff. But sometimes you will get answers such as, well, you know, that was just stupid, or why wasn't the worker, you know, he didn't have common sense. He didn't have common sense. How is he going to use a plasma cutter on something that he doesn't even know what's in it? And when we say that those are the causes of injuries and incidents, we are looking at safety the wrong way. So we do want to find through root cause analysis and a actual well thought of incident investigation program, we want to find those root causes, and most of the time has to do with a lack of, and we call it those 6 P's, right? Policies, programs, plans, procedures, etc. And in this case, of course, the training program for young workers or new workers is lacking. And then, is it effective? And one more thing there was no hazard assessment before doing the task. The thing that I want to bring to your attention for all of you today is that in most organizations, you will always find that there are tasks that are not done every day. There's always something lurking in the dark that you've never done, but we need to do it today or this summer, or a cleaning task or a purging task, or we opened up this wall and now all of a sudden we have this space and we're going to do that. And we're going to tell maintenance to do this. And now this crew, by the way, we have these new workers and they're summer workers and they're going to help us with that. So every time you have a different variable brought to the workplace in regards to tasks and specific jobs, you must do a hazard assessment and utilize the tools that we have. You're very good at this already, but remember that many times when you have a new lead person come up to more safety responsibilities at your job site, that you need to train them in regards to these tools, because through job safety analysis tools, through job hazard analysis tools, it would have been so nice to do a JSA or a JHA with this particular task and say, you know what, this is a task where we need to actually purge the drum if we're really going to use it. And we're going to purge it first before we intend to cut it. Or why are we cutting it in the first place? Many times we talk about hierarchy of controls, right? And we want to eliminate first and foremost all of the hazards. So if a task doesn't need to be done, or if there's a way around it, or if there's a way of not doing a hazardous task or not exposing the worker to any of those hazards, that's the way to go. Elimination at all points. So that's the key of this slide, of this video. Please make sure that during the summer and throughout the year, you keep a big eye and a good eye out for those things that are new, for those tasks that you don't do on a routine basis. So non-routine tasks and new workers. Recipe for disaster if not done correctly. These types of things bring CalOSHA on the site. They bring inspections. Why? Because you're going to have a serious injury or illness. And in this case, burns, severe cuts, even cuts will bring OSHA on the site, because it's considered, you know, anything that requires sutures or even a small tip of the finger that is being amputated, that is considered a serious injury and will bring OSHA on the side, because you need to report it, right? And remember, even if you as an employer, you are thinking, I'm not going to call CalOSHA. I know I'm required, but I'm just not going to do it, because why throw light on something that is, you know, it's just the tip of a finger, or it's just a trip. He tripped, fell on some debris, and there happened to be some glass. Now he had to have some suturing of the hand. Okay, that brings OSHA on the side when it's reported. But guess what? Police and first responders are mandated to also pick up the phone and call CalOSHA. So one way or another, you are going to be found out. And the fine for not reporting something like this is $5,000. It's still $5,000. I'm surprised that didn't go up, but it's still $5,000. The rest of the fines did go up, and I have an actual document that I will send that I put together for you with those new numbers. But it is important that we look at this from the safety perspective of anything new, anything unusual, anything non-routine, especially with those non-experienced workers, needs to be analyzed prior to the job taking place. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So that's number one. This is another example, and this is something that is available in YouTube as well. This is the Bacardi bottling plant, the Vazquez. This is a death. And nowadays, something that, a couple of things that I want to bring to your attention for tips to improve your safety program. The date and time on pictures or videos, very, very important. More so now in pictures. During incident investigation, it's very important that you have dates and times. Also, I walked the floor at 2 different job sites probably 2 weeks ago. This was for scaffold in construction sites, heat illness, etc. And I noticed that one of the issues that continued to be repeated at some of the sites was being documented with pictures. And documentation through pictures is nice, but without a date and time, it's really not going to fly in case you need to prove something. So look up some applications in regards to taking pictures with your smartphones that also stamp the date and the time. Please, that's very important. So in this case, they had the bottles or the cases of glass bottles come down a conveyor belt and be sorted, etc. But there was some issue with the equipment so that the bottles would get crammed and some of them would break and fall and go underneath some of the parts, moving parts of the machine. So when that happened, they needed to actually unjam it by going under the specific area of the machine, which is here. And they had to clean it all up. They had to actually use a broom and sweep it out. And so one of the workers, being a temp worker, not knowing the danger of going underneath this platform where the glass bottles in cases, heavy, big cases, would come and press down the platform. That was very dangerous. He still was doing this on and off every time the glass was cluttering the bottom of this part of the machine. He would get in there underneath and clean it all out. He did this repeatedly, but in one of these occasions, a worker stepped away from the controls and didn't know that he went under to sweep. When he came back, he didn't know he was still under there sweeping and started the machine. And it was almost 2 tons of glass containers and cases that pressed down the platform, crushing the worker to death. So once again, we have the issue of, and in this case, of course, is lockout, tag out, right? The procedures, the actual written procedures, and the actual training of authorized employees, affected employers, other employees. I know some of you know and have knowledge of lockout, tag out in depth. Some of you don't. Believe me, all of your temp workers, your new workers, they're temp or new every time they come onto your facility, even if they've been working for manufacturing plants their whole life. So they need to have training. They need to go through a new worker orientation program where all of these things are well explained, and your machines need to have signs, accident tags and signs that are also explained to the workers so that they know, for example, whenever there's moving machinery and equipment, they can't just do tasks such as this one because they're extremely dangerous. And that also brings, of course, it brings OSHA to the site because it's death. So serious injuries bring OSHA to the site, even if it's something as simple as, and we say simple, but it really is an amputation, even that tip of a finger that touched the bone, and injure the worker, or a cut where there's a laceration and sutures have to be done on a hand that was deeply cut. That's a serious injury or illness. And in this case, a death, that brings OSHA to the site. Now, things that may not be bringing OSHA to the site, but will bring OSHA because of complaints. Here we go. You see these pictures. These are all from reports and sites that I visit, that I go out there and walk the floor with you, and we point out issues and situations that we need to improve. So in this case, this is a facility that had a very nice warehouse, and during the pandemic, they had to downsize and it became chaotic. So now you have parts, cleaning parts in areas where you didn't before. You have, chemicals laying around. I have pictures here of chemicals even knocked down on pallets. You have an eye wash station that is being blocked by things that are bringing all around it. So now there's no clear access, unobstructed access to the actual eye wash station. There is no record of it ever being activated or tested to make sure that it works. Labels on chemicals are not clear, so you cannot even tell what's in them. Issues of slip and fall because of hoses everywhere, or puddles, or water, or chemicals. And you're thinking, well, but this is not causing injury or illness, but it has the potential to, right? the thing is, workers also get tired of a mess. We all do. Nobody likes a messy place. We all do. Nobody likes a non-clean, untidy, hazardous area to work at. Even your desk, it could be a death trap. You don't know. But in this case, workers start getting tired of working in these conditions. Even if you're going through this period, try and get a handle on, the actual housekeeping issues, the safety issues. Communicate constantly. Let them know what your priorities are. So that's very important. Deadlines, priorities, because this brings about complaints. Who can complain? Anybody. It could be a member of the public. It could be your workers. It could be the wife of the worker who's worried he or she is going to die just because they're working for you and you're more dangerous than working for any circus in town. Make sure you get a handle of things, prioritize, but not just do it in your head. Actually talk to your workers, highlight these issues to get their help, to actually start cleaning up, to actually get more order. Because if they don't know that this is not allowed, then you're not communicating, you're not speaking the same language. So in this case, of course, a hazard communication program may be in writing, maybe in the company, but it is not being observed. So it's not an effective program. That's when we haven't learned to break the gap between what you wrote as a promise to keep them safe and what you're actually doing. So this will bring OSHA because of the lack of housekeeping and non-effective issues of hazard communication. Respiratory protection and personal protective equipment also brings OSHA on site. There can be complaints. So here is dust, and we have dust in different kinds of industries, manufacturing, flavoring, manufacturing. We also have, I think, baking goods, bakeries. What else? Talk to me. Sugar manufacturing or processing, any dust such as a textile dust, etc. Well, many times without us doing an actual analysis and going through the hierarchy of controls, we start providing with personal protective equipment. And this is the case of a facility that I was hired to take a look at and walk the floor. And we looked at these beautiful hooks. I love when people are organized, clean and organized, and they keep their PPE well out of the way and organized. The problem with this picture is that any respiratory protection that is hanging out like this raises two questions. Number one, is there a respiratory protection program in place? And number two, is the actual respiratory protection program including a process or procedure for workers to know how to appropriately store it, clean it and store it? Because without appropriate cleaning and storage, the mask will be rendered unused, out of use. Why? The filters can get clogged. The mask may not be the right mask for the worker. The worker may not even know how to wear it. And it just so happens that at this particular facility, most of the workers who actually wore these masks were all bearded men. So they had beards. I didn't see one single of those guys without a beard, maybe one or two. But you cannot wear a half mask respirator or any respirator for that matter and have a good seal if you have a beard. And those of you that have an actual respiratory protection program in place know this. So the issue here was dust. And in this case, the manager, who is actually very dedicated to safety, started doing some research as to the mask that would be appropriate for this type of particulate. And he came up with this elastomeric respirator, but he wasn't aware of the requirements for a full-blown respiratory protection program. And so we discussed it. They're on their way to improving this issue. And these are some of the situations that will bring complaints to OSHA. Why? Because workers start asking, and how do I know that this is not going into my lungs? Or, at night, I feel this dust in the back of my throat, or my eyes are irritated, or, my asthma is being aggravated. Remember, that's why the word individual. We're all different. Some of us will get in that chamber and work with dust all day long and nothing will happen to us till later. And some of us, the first day that we're exposed to this dust, will get some irritation of throat, nose, and all of our respiratory passages. So we are all different, and you want to avoid at all costs these very glaring hazards where people are not going to be happy. And also depends on what type of communication you have. You may have issues where people are not sure if they can come up to you and bring these concerns, which is not good. They should be able. You should be the type of company that opens its doors and people come to you and discuss these issues. there's a broken guard on a machine that actually tests tension. So if the part that is being tested hits the guard and it breaks it and it shatters it, when will you change and fix this guard? And the other one, it was an interesting situation where people were opening a cover with electrical equipment and accessing the buttons quite often. And then you had that huge sign that's a danger of arc flash. And then I see them resetting the button at all times, not qualified people. So these are the issues that I see every day. And so you're not going to find them unless you walk the walk, unless you go down there and talk to the person in charge of that area and you ask the questions. There's no such a thing as a silly question. You may see that and you may be thinking these guys are doing their job, everything looks up to par, but ask, okay, so I see a sign here that it says danger, and yet I see them accessing this area. How come? And so even if you don't know, you don't specialize in the particular area of your facility, by walking with the manager, by asking questions, you'll learn a lot. And these are the things that many times workers are not happy with, but they won't say anything. But by walking the walk, and many times when I come on board, since I'm not wearing your shirt, they see me as somebody from the outside. And it depends on the relationship and who do they think I am. They'll actually come up to me after the training many times. I'll go, oh, you know what? I know that you were talking about this and I saw you walking the floor. I wanted you to know this and that. And they bring concerns, and that's wonderful, because this got us to know, for example, that some people had concerns regarding, the lockout tagout procedures for machinery and equipment, that they had concerns as to a worker was saying his wrapping machine was jamming quite often. And after training and me walking the floor, he brought it up to our attention. And hey, it was really great, because then his manager went on the floor, took a look at the machine. He thought, you know what? This is getting a little too iffy. I don't want you to lose the tip of your finger one of these days. So they just needed to actually either get a new machine or order a part. But these are things that won't come up to the surface unless you actually have a good ongoing communication where you prioritize, where you tell them what are the deadlines and what are you doing. Because issues we're going to find in every single of your organizations, things like the pictures I showed you. This is something that we find all the time. You're not going to be perfect. No one is. But walking the walk, working together, and best and foremost, communicating, asking their help, saying, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to fix it. This is when we're going to fix it. And this is how we are going to avoid you being exposed to the hazard. That's what matters to them. No one wants to get hurt. I mean, even a bruise, a contusion, a laceration, that's not fun. So let's do it together. And remember, to avoid OSHA fines in 2023, the first thing you want to do is avoid complaints. By fixing those things, by communicating, by walking the walk with the pictures that I show you. And the examples I've given you. So that gives you a great idea. And when I say avoid complaints, also remember to utilize the hierarchy of controls, which starts with elimination. Can you eliminate the use of that hazardous chemical or that hazardous machine or the whole process entirely? Can it be automated? That's the word I was looking for. Can it be automated so that you completely eliminate it? Number 2, avoid glaring hazards. And now when I say this, that doesn't mean only avoid the glaring ones and just keep the other ones hidden. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, remember that many times as you have your whole operation in plain sight, a OSHA inspector can drive by and stop just because he sees your worker overreaching on a ladder. So inspectors do drive by, they will feel tempted to stop, or someone that is very well versed on safety, like myself, anybody, you yourself, you're driving by, you see something, that person's going to fall, someone's going to die, you pick up the phone and complain. That can be done. Well, you want to avoid those things. You want to always tackle these hazards the moment you see them happening. And for those other hazards that are non-glaring, continue to work on them, like the pictures that I showed you and the communication and the walking the walk. Number 3 of how to avoid OSHA fines in 2023, avoid serious injuries. So during the summer, you get a lot of temp workers, new workers, young workers. Make sure you have a sturdy new worker orientation safety program. talk to them about what they're going to do, give them authorization for the task they're going to do, and tell them they're non-authorized for other tasks. That's a powerful word, authorized and non-authorized. Tell them what they're authorized to do. Tell them what machinery and equipment they're authorized to use and authorized to operate so that you avoid those serious injuries. And number 4, how to avoid Cal OSHA fines in 2023, lowered your experience modification rate below 1.25. What is that? Maybe you've never heard of this. Your experience modification is only a way to measure how many claims are you having, how expensive they are in comparison to others in the same type of industry, right? So this is the number that your insurance carrier is using to calculate your rates, and it'll go up as your claims go up. And it is also important that you keep it on the 2.5 because 1 is an actual issue of you're at the same average compared to the same type of industry you're in, but anything above 1.1 tells your insurance carrier you're a little bit above what everyone else is at in your same type of industry in your state, right? So I get here. Thank you for, oh, by the way, you're going to get a copy of all the slides. I'm just reading some of your comments. Make sure that you lower your X mod then. One of the methods that Cal OSHA will use to visit your sites is randomized, and the other one is using your X mod. So they do have a list of high hazard industries, and they have, it changes and they add industries and they take out industries due to they use the DART, which is the days of waste restricted and transferred rate. And then they will use that as a method to randomly, they have a list of names that are part of that high hazard industry list, and they will go visit you randomly. But they also have a different method in which they actually use that same high hazard industry list, and they will pick those with an X mod of 1.25 and above, and they will prioritize the ones with the highest X mod. So that should be your ding, 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 red flag today. Why? Because you tell, oh, well, we're 1.3, we're 1.4, we're 1.5, we're 1.6. Goodness gracious, right? It takes time to lower your X mod because it's a 3-year number, and you can't, even if you were really good last year, you can't take that yet into account because those claims are barely being processed. And the day before, some of those claims haven't closed yet. So it usually goes back almost 5 years. And that's the number you're actually, Cal OSHA is actually using to go and target you today, even if you're being a good boy or a good girl now, right? So this is an important number. I really urge you to get a hold of it now. Don't throw your hands up and say, well, if it doesn't really matter because the claims that we had last year were so many and it won't really count. Well, in another 3 years, that you're still going to be dragging that rise in injuries, and you don't want that. So get a hold of them now so that your numbers continue to improve. Your X mod continues to be lower as the years go by. All right, so talk to your environmental health and safety person, your safety director, your lead people, your supervisor, your managers, and give them a copy of the slides because we really want to get this under control. Okay, so the fines are issued within 6 months of the violation. So when OSHA shows up at your workplace, knock on wood, hopefully it never happens to you, but when they do, they have 6 months to issue all of these, the documents where they tell you what are the citations and the penalties associated with those violations. In 2023, OSHA, federal OSHA, started with an emphasis on enforcement program by changing some of their policies. And they sent out 2 different memorandums in which, is that how you say it in plural? I think it's memorandums. Okay. So they sent out 2 starting January 2013, and they said, you know what, we want to deter employers from incurring into all of these violations. So I'll show you the 2 memos, and you can actually, there's a lot of good homework that you can do from that. But it is important to know that the actual penalties for the different kinds of violations went up, and they actually wanted to deter these types of violations by allowing the actual area directors and inspectors. So the inspector is the actual OSHA or COSHA. We call it COSHAs because they're compliance, safety, and health officers. They show up at your workplace. They look at what's going on. They take pictures. They write it down. They provide you with a document during the closing conference where they say, this is what we found. You're going to get a document in the mail saying, you know, listing the citations, and we're going to assess you for penalties. So it gives them a chance to go up with their area director, which is their boss, and discuss this emphasis on enforcement changes in policy, where they can actually go instance by instance, or instead of grouping all of those violations, taking them and dissecting them and actually enforcing by penalizing you differently and categorizing those violations with in a higher category. So maybe instead of regulatory, it'll be serious. Maybe instead of serious, it will be willful. So those are the changes in 2023, not just that the penalties are higher, but also that there is an emphasis on enforcement this year. So this is some of the highest penalties increases that we've had since 2016, 7.7% effective January 17, 2023. So in federal OSHA or under federal jurisdiction, a serious violation can cost up to 15 grand. For California, it has been higher. Historically, we've had higher penalties. And let me see if I can actually show you that document. I did have it out yesterday. I put it together for you, and I put it together, so I'm going to send it to you guys because you're always so faithful and you take the time to be in these classes. Let me see, I have it right here somewhere here. I know I get so many documents. I'll open a couple here. That one, I think it's 2023 OSHA. Just give me a sec. Assessment of penalties, I think I called it. If I can't get it on the screen, I will send it to you. In any case, it's important that you all have that, especially if you're trying to get upper management buy-in so that they help you change something or put money into some sort of a training program. I just had another client asking for a special fall protection program, and I thought that was really good because they hadn't done it before. They just did a shorter kind of training. New work orientation. Site inspection. What did I do? Now I can't find it. See? Well, I'll continue with my slides. Are you guys looking at my slides, Lindsay? Or did I stop my sharing?
You stopped it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Then you just get to see my face and you get bored of seeing my face. Okay, here we go. Okay, so there's a screenshot of the first memorandum application of instance by instance. And this is what I wanted to see. The memorandum was for the regional administrators and the state plan designees. So California has a state plan. So they get to actually take a look at this and use it. And this one is called the instance by instance penalty adjustments effective March 27th, 2023. So this is 2023. So this is something that is already in place. What does that mean, or why is it important? Hold on. It's important because instance by instance citations now are being applied to more than just willful citations. Before, it was just high gravity willful violations, but now it applies to just any high gravity violations, not necessarily willful, that have to do with things such as lockout, tag out. And we just saw the importance of why that is being targeted by OSHA. Machine guarding, permit required confined spaces, respiratory protection, falls, and trenching. So, and what is interesting is these are the things that I see out there in the field. It's not real. It's not just a document. It comes alive every time I walk your floors. So I promise to tell you what I see that is usually overlooked. So I do have a lot of lockout tagout issues out there that haven't been looked upon closely by your manager. So number one, things that I see that no one thinks about. Number one is that awareness training. So you go ahead and take that authorized person who fixes your machines, and he knows everything. He knows where the hardware is. He knows where the lockout tagout equipment is. He knows how to do it. He knows the step-by-step. He knows everything. But then you have those affected employees, those who operate the machinery. And I have an issue with them not having in-depth training because they get tempted to unjam or service the machine when the maintenance guy or the authorized guy is not there. And then you have the other affected employees who will actually include your temp workers, your young workers, and anybody who is around those pieces of equipment that may feel tempted to get help from them. Hey, so-and-so, come over and help me unjam this. He has no experience. He has no idea. He's never heard the word lotto. He thinks it's some sort of lottery ticket that you're going to give him. Little does he know that it's a machine that is going to eat his arm up. Periodic inspections. I don't see any of those taking place. I don't see them documented. You need to actually take the time. I believe it's every 2 years. Oh, I would have to check that. If my memory serves me right, periodic inspections is you walking around with those procedures and taking a look at whether or not they're being performed as they should. So it's like a different person from those authorized, taking a look at your procedure and seeing that it's actually taking place and adjusting those things that are not being done or steps that are being skipped. That I don't see often. I don't see documented periodic inspections, which is actually mandated by the standard. Then you get a lot of respiratory issues. So I see it all the time, from small clinics to manufacturing to any process where, so I'll tell you the 2 recent ones that I got. Spray booths. Yes, spray booths. So those are the recent ones, but I also, like I showed you in the pictures, anytime you have dust, what kind of dust do you have? And the first thing I said, so you know, I have to clarify this because I went off of a tangent there with the picture. When I get back to my desk, I realize there are systems, right? And I should go that route first, but it's the most expensive option. So for that particular picture with the half mask elastomeric respirators, I brought it up to the attention of both managers. And I said, why don't you just buy one of those extractors in that room that gets rid of the dust and you do not have to put anyone on a mask? And the answer is, because we don't have the money. Didn't you just see we're scrambling because we don't have enough people, etc. You got to prioritize. You got to take a look at, you know, the types of, and you manager, you're going to do the homework. How much would it cost to have a person with asthma be exposed to that dust, bringing up a claim, and then, you know, compare to you buying that extractor? Okay, so respiratory is not just things with COVID. It's all of us. Do we have instances or areas in our facility where these respirators are being used and we're not doing it the right way? So with spray booths, I actually visited 2 different clients this year where they had spray booths and they were giving the worker who was doing the spraying the filtering pieces, just the regular dust mask N95, and they were allowing the worker to check for a seal prior to use. But the question is, do you have a program? Have they been fit tested? Because annually your face changes. Not for sure that it's going to change, but it's required that every year you get fit tested to see that that branded model is sealing well against your skin. Anyway, I've seen those, and these were my 2 most recent ones. Falls, ladder training. Guys, I can't tell you enough times how much lack of training in regards to portable ladders I see. Last week, I was at a training for fall protection. It was an awareness training. We brought up some issues, pictures, field pictures of issues that we find when it's an unprotected edge, scaffold, and some of the checklists that we have out there in the field for the use of scaffold if you're not erecting it, but using it. And then we brought the issue of ladders because as we were doing the training, which we were doing in the warehouse, I see a ton of ladders. We bring the ladder up, self-supported and also an extension ladder. What are the issues? What are the 7 key points that OSHA mandates us to discuss today? And we went over them. And the first one was, talking about these things can kill you. Yeah. And being aware that ladders are a dangerous piece of equipment. Then the second one goes to inspection. Then the third one, the second one goes to choosing the right ladder. Then the third one goes to inspection. And as we were pulling some of the ladders that they had stacked, nicely stacked, mind you, because many times I go to warehouses where the ladders are everywhere, they did purchase a ladder rack where they store their ladders very nicely. But as we brought a couple of them out, some of them had bent side railing or rungs, or a lot of chemicals on it because of what they use out there in the field. Things that workers were sitting there and as they came up or were volunteering to come up and do the inspection in front of the class, which is hard to get them to do, by the way. So when I'm starting to just break them up in groups, just break up in groups. Sometimes it's 5 people each group. Sometimes it's a little bit more. I don't like very large groups because some just kind of stand there and eat a burrito while somebody else is talking. I like when people engage. So smaller groups, 5 guys with a ladder, and then all of a sudden they start talking. Where before, they don't even think that's important. It's like, I just take my ladder, dude, and put it in my truck and I go to work. The key issue here is managers know all of those 7 points. Managers know that these guys are going out there with a ladder without stickers, old ladders, the ropes on those extension ladders are all frayed, they need to be replaced, or the feet on those ladders are no good anymore, they need to be replaced, or the components, or there's so much smearing of chemicals that is getting on those ladders, no one's cleaning them, or they have them on their trucks for years now and the sun is beating them down. You get a lot of spider webbing on the sides, the railing, etc., of those aluminum, not the aluminum, sorry, the fiberglass ladders. So this is constantly overlooked. I urge you today. I did prepare a guide for my supervisors. I handed it to them that day and I said, you have to discuss the 7 points with any new guy, any of your new crew members. And you have to tell them, for example, climbing, 3 points of contact. If you got to have material with you, or as you're doing your job installing and you get tempted to get that part or portion of what you're installing with you and then kind of hop down the ladder, it's a big no-no. It's 3 points of contact and it's right there in your 7-point guide. And that's when questions come up, because a lot of the times they don't want to do it, because then the worker will say, but you make me do that. You've asked me to do it that way. Well, you have to say this. I'm really sorry. We're changing it. We realize it's not a safe way. It has to come out of your mouth. Trenching requirements because of the awareness training, the actual classification of soils, and how people are actually working inside trenches that are not sloped or protected adequately, and then you have a lot of cave-ins. And then also, that's in the big part of construction. But for those of you with smaller operations, when did this become a problem? I do have a couple of landscapers and tree trimmers that get to do small digging and trenching. So it's not going to go very deep and it's not going to be in a big construction project. But guess what? Digging is dangerous because you have all those lines running underneath, electrical, water, gas. You can't, there's a requirement 2 days prior. You need to know what's in there. You need to know what's on the ground, where you're going to be digging. You need to mark it. You need to make sure that the utilities have been notified, service stop. What are you doing? 2 days. So trenching requirements. Usually overlooked, especially in smaller operations. So if you're digging, make sure that you actually look at the regulation, ask me questions, see if you have any questions. But those are the issues that are causing trouble. And here is a little bit more of that enforcement by OSHA, this 2023. The authority to issue instance by instance citations if one or more of the following factors is present. So in the memo, you will find when are they going to be given authority to issue instance by instance citations. So remember, all of this is with the goal of throwing light on those employers that are violating safety standards. And now instead of just doing instance by instance when it's willful, now they're going to do it for high gravity issues. So if you have ever received a willful, they're going to do it. if you fail to report a fatality or inpatient hospitalization and you're thinking, I'm not going to do it, remember, first responders and police are required to actually report to Cal OSHA. So you're going to get found out. The proposed citations are related to a fatality catastrophe, or the proposed record keeping citations are related to injury or illness resulting from a serious hazard. So even record keeping is being looked at. And before, we didn't have that unless it was a willful type of violation. The second memorandum has to do with grouping violations, and the memorandum is for regional administrators, but this is where I was telling you earlier, your inspector shows up at the workplace. Who is he going to talk to? The actual area director, and the area director is well versed on these changes in policy, and he's the one that is going to say, well, maybe you should do this. Let's go ahead and not group them, because if you do not group them, that allows you to get the citations to be a little bit more severe, higher penalty, but it's also classified differently and it stays in your record. And historically, that's not going to help you if there's an injury or illness in the future and they see your history, even during third party lawsuits, et cetera, liability issues, et cetera, you will not have an easy time whenever Cal OSHA takes those violations and classifies them a little bit more serious. So here it is, a document, for example, and it goes, the memorandum is intended to reiterate existing policy that allows regional administrators and area directors. Once again, area directors are the bosses of those inspectors that show up at your place. It gives them discretion not to group violations in appropriate cases to achieve a deterrent effect. In particular, the agency may refrain from grouping violations where there is evidence that worksite conditions giving rise to the violations are separate and distinct, or where different conduct gave rise to the violations. It's a lot of wording, although it's a short memo. I will give you this tip. Look at the FOM chapter 4 violations, because they do have scenarios where grouping violations should normally be considered. So very good. Once again, this is all about that emphasis on enforcement and how 2023 not just brought higher penalties, but also changes in policy to deter employers from continue to violate or have glaring hazards that are not being fixed. So serious, it went from a penalty minimum of 1,116 to 15,625 per violation. Other than serious, so the type of violation when you talk about federal jurisdiction or states under federal jurisdictions goes from serious, other than serious, willful or repeated, posting requirements, failure to abate. And in California, we talk about them a little bit differently, but we're also very high. Oh, here it is. So I did create a document with this, but you're going to get the slides anyways. So regulatory in California, the minimum is 500, the maximum is 15,375, so slightly lower than federal, which historically it's never been like this. We've been highest, always higher than federal. General is up to 15, and remember, these adjustments, they adjust this number by size, good faith, and history. This is why the history is so important, and no abatement credit. When it says no abatement credit, what that means is sometimes they will give you a 50% abatement credit because you fixed the hazard right there and then, even before they issued the document. So they will give you an abatement credit, or you abated before the date they give you for you to fix that hazard. So that's the general. The serious goes into, hold on, and then I have here a question or a comment for the requirement. Does not alleviate the employer. Okay, it is important to remember that the requirement for first responders, emergency physicians, ambulance transporters to report does not alleviate the employer of their own responsibility. Oh, Randy, you're awesome. Thank you for helping me with this. Yes, that is true. The fact that, and because I've mentioned it twice, the fact that they're mandated to report to Cal OSHA as well doesn't mean that, oh, it's okay, they will call anyway, so I don't have to. It doesn't alleviate you from the responsibility to pick up the phone and call. So you need to have written protocols when to call Cal OSHA because of a serious injury or illness, or because they've been admitted in the hospital as inpatient hospitalization, right? Some employers, when the responder says, we will report this to OSHA, think, okay, that's okay. Thank you. We don't have to. It's not true. Thank you, Randy. Thank you so much. It's true. Responders, paramedics will say, don't worry, or they'll say, we'll report this to OSHA. Don't stop right there and say, okay, then if they do, I don't have to do it. You do. And you have to have your protocols. You have to have your trained people to know. I call them cheat sheets, right? They pull it out and they go, okay, so if it's this kind of injury, I pick up the phone and call. This is the number in my jurisdiction, because there's different enforcement numbers. It has to be the enforcement side of Cal OSHA. It can't be the consultation. Thank you. That was great. So now the serious is minimum 18 to 25,000. The base penalty will be adjusted for extent and likelihood. So there's a lot of adjustments to these numbers, either because of size, good faith, and history, or because your base penalty gets determined by evaluating the severity of the injury and illness that could result from that hazard, and it gets adjusted by the extent, so how many people, and the likelihood, how likely is for this to happen. All of that gets to be decided between who? The inspector, the COSHO, and their area director. That's when they put together this document, beautiful document that they send to you. Hopefully you will never receive, but that's how it goes. So all of the above, the violations that are classified under regulatory, general, or serious, get to be adjusted by size, good faith, and history, and abatement credit is sometimes granted, not all the time. There's some repeat violations that are different depending, for example, for the use of a carcinogen. And willful get multiplied by 5. Any willful violation shall not be less than 10 grand or 11 grand, almost 11, and shall not exceed 153 grand. So failure to abate is also 15 grand per day that you failed. So if they told you fix it by Monday and it's already Friday, that's 15 grand times 5. So basically, your documentation for training becomes super important, and we are out of time, aren't we? Yeah, I'm actually a minute over. This is something that I've talked to you guys in the past. I have given you samples of good training rosters so that you can document everything on the screen. The one that I see is mostly overlooked is your outline. So make sure that you have a way to prove what was taught or discussed that day. So I have an example. I'll send it to you along with the slides. And remember, I have this last slide for you guys to review some of your key OSHA compliant issues. So I'm sorry, I'm just going over it. I talked about them today, such as new tasks, new work orientations, some of the things that we talked about today. And the last line I like to say, trust but verify. Whenever you assign someone to do something for you, trust that they'll do it great, just verify it, verify it. There's some great resources there, a summary of the requirements of the standards. This is a federal one, but you can go to this other one, the link that I have here for Cal OSHA. It's been a pleasure having you. And there's some examples here in your slides that you're going to get, and I will send them to you as downloadable documents because they are very, very helpful. All right, guys, I will see you in a month. Lindsay, you are awesome. Have a great weekend. And don't forget to pass the link and to register for every single first Friday of the month, because we'll always have something new and you guys always have great questions.
Thank you so much, Alba. Thank you, everyone. We'll be sending out evaluations if you guys could fill that out, but have a great weekend and have a great weekend, Alba.
Oh, Lindsay, we have next week aerosol transmissible disease.
Yeah, if we can have a couple more, if we have 1 or 2 more people sign up, we'll have that going for next week. So if you have any interest in that, let us know. Register for that as soon as you can. We also have a lot of classes for the rest of this month and August, so look into that.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Okay. Please take a look at the website, and we'll see you later. I'll send the slides now. Thank you, Lindsay.
Take care.
All right. Bye, guys.